She stood in the town square, the coarse dust rising around her boots, and tried to ignore the laughter that circled like vultures. "Well, look at her dress," a woman sneered, pointing at the faded fabric that clung awkwardly to her shoulders. "Didn't anyone teach her to stitch properly?" A boy in a straw hat giggled, nudging his friend. "She looks like she borrowed a sack from the bakery." She clenched her fists, the words slicing deeper than any whip. "Leave me be," she muttered, voice shaking but low enough to avoid drawing more attention. "Oh, don't you speak to us," another voice barked, a man with a crooked smile leaning on his cane. "You'll only make yourself look worse." Her cheeks burned, her mouth dry, but she forced herself to take a step forward. The sun dipped low, painting the wooden storefronts in gold and shadow. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the splintered boards of the sidewalk. The shopkeeper behind the counter barely glanced at her, eyes flicking quickly away as if her existence embarrassed him too. "Ha! Even the shopkeeper won't serve her," someone whispered. The words traveled like wildfire, picked up and repeated by mocking voices. She stumbled, her foot catching a loose board. "Sorry," she whispered, but the apology was swallowed by laughter. A little girl pointed. "Mama, look at her shoes. They're so dirty." "Those boots belong in a barn, not a person," the mother snapped back, not looking at her. Her hands tightened over the skirt of her dress. She could feel the heat of tears behind her eyes, burning and unwelcome. She wanted silence, a quiet place where the world would stop speaking in cruelty. But the voices grew louder, more insistent, each one a hammer against her heart. From the corner of her eye, she noticed movement, a shadow stretching across the square, calm and steady. A tall figure sat upon a horse, the reins loosely held, watching the scene with quiet eyes. He did not speak, did not gesture. Yet somehow, his presence offered a fragile lifeline. She dared a glance at him. His gaze was steady, assessing but kind, and she felt her shoulders relax slightly despite the fire in the crowd's whispers. "She shouldn't be here," someone muttered, spitting on the ground. "A disgrace to the town." "She can't even stand straight," another added. "Why does she even breathe the same air as us?" Her breath came fast, shallow. She stepped backward, but the circle tightened. "Move along," she said, voice rising just enough to cut through the laughter. "I'm leaving." "Not before everyone sees you humiliated," a tall boy jeered, holding his hat over his mouth to hide his grin. She swallowed hard, the sting in her throat growing sharper. Every step toward the edge of the square felt heavier than the last. The fading light cast long, trembling shadows across the wood-plank street, and the town's jeers felt like claws scratching at her skin. The man on horseback shifted slightly. His hat shaded his face, but the glint of concern in his eyes did not go unnoticed. She wanted to run to him, to find refuge in the quiet strength he offered, without words. "You think standing there makes you brave?" a woman shouted. "Pathetic. You're nothing." Her knees threatened to buckle. The dusty wind whipped around her, tossing stray strands of hair into her face. She swatted them away, ignoring the heat of embarrassment spreading across her neck. "Stop it," she cried, her voice cracking. "I said leave me be." The words seemed to momentarily still the crowd. They watched her, a fragile figure trembling in the last light, daring anyone to move closer. The silence was brief, and then the laughter returned, louder this time, a tidal wave of scorn. The cowboy didn't intervene, not yet. He remained on his horse, calm and unmoving, letting the world act itself out. Yet his presence alone made her feel less alone. She dared a small step toward him, toward the shadow that promised understanding, even if he offered no comfort beyond watching. "Look at her. She thinks she belongs," someone shouted from behind. She clenched her teeth, holding herself upright despite the shaking. The words fell around her like stones, heavy and unrelenting. But the quiet gaze of the man on horseback grounded her. He didn't judge, didn't mock. He simply saw her, and that was enough to keep her from collapsing entirely. The sun touched the horizon, the sky a blaze of orange and purple, and for a moment, the dust and the cruelty seemed to pause. She inhaled, chest tight, and dared to meet the man's eyes. No words passed between them, but his steady look promised a kind of safety she hadn't known in years. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and moved toward the edge of the square, away from the laughter but not away from hope. The townsfolk's jeers followed her, but her gaze stayed fixed on him. Even if she didn't know his name, didn't know his intentions, she understood that someone outside this cruelty existed, a witness who might see her worth. And as the shadows swallowed the last light, she felt a small, trembling thread of courage stitch itself into her chest. She climbed the rickety stairs to the room above the shuttered saloon, each step groaning under her weight. The wind rattled the old shutters, letting in cool drafts that carried the smell of hay and distant horses. She pulled her shawl tighter, wrapping it around her shoulders like a shield. "No one will ever see you, not really," she muttered to herself, voice thin, almost lost to the wind. A sudden knock at the door made her start. She froze, clutching the shawl. "Who's there?" she called softly, wary. "Just someone who wants to help," a calm voice answered. She recognized it instantly, the quiet cowboy from the town square. "You can come with me. It'll be safer." Her stomach nodded. "Safer? How do you know that? You don't even know me." "I've seen enough to know you don't belong out there," he said gently. "Not the way they treat you." She hesitated, eyes scanning the floorboards as if she could vanish into their cracks. "And if I go, what then?" Another disappointment. He shifted his weight, voice steady but patient. "Then at least it'll be a chance. That's more than staying here." She glanced through the shutter gap at the dusty street below, still littered with fading shadows. The town's laughter had followed her home in her mind. "I don't know if I can trust anyone." "You can trust me." "For now, just that," he said. His hand rested lightly on the doorframe, steady and unthreatening. "No promises beyond that." She swallowed hard, pulling the shawl closer. "It's not easy. People, they don't stop." "They won't always stop," he admitted. "But they can't reach you here." He gestured to the open sky beyond the broken shutters, where twilight painted the horizon in pale orange and purple. "Not if you don't let them." Her fingers twined in the shawl's frayed edges. She felt exposed, tiny against the vast sky outside. "I've been alone a long time," she whispered, almost to herself. "Then it's time for something different," he said. His voice carried the weight of quiet certainty. "Come down. I'll show you." She shook her head. "And if I can't keep up? What if I make a mistake?" He smiled faintly, the kind of small gesture that eased tension without words. "We all make mistakes. Doesn't mean we stop trying." Her heart thumped, a hesitant rhythm of fear and longing. She stepped closer to the door. "And you really don't mind?" "I mind only if someone hurts you," he said. "I can't stop the world, but I can stop what I see." The words felt heavy and real. She stared at the floor for a long moment, tracing the worn planks with her gaze. The wind whispered again through the shutters, carrying a faint scent of horses and hay, a reminder of the life beyond her isolation. "You're different," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Not like them." "Different doesn't mean better or worse," he said, "just different. And sometimes that's enough to start." She swallowed, a tight knot in her chest loosening just slightly. "I don't even know your name." "Names aren't important right now," he replied. "You'll call me what feels right when you're ready." She hesitated another moment, then stepped toward him, her boots creaking against the floor. Each step carried years of doubt, humiliation, and loneliness. The doorframe felt solid under her hand, a point of anchor she hadn't known she needed. I'll come," she said at last, voice quivering. "But slowly. I can't move too fast." "Slow is better," he said with a calm nod. "No rush. Just step by step." She looked back at the empty room, the cracked walls and the wind-whipped shutters, and then at the wide horizon beyond the door. "I never thought anyone would care." "I do," he said simply. "Right now, that has to be enough." Her chest tightened, emotions she hadn't named rising in her throat. She adjusted the shawl and took a small step out into the corridor. I hope it really is safe." He stayed close but didn't crowd her. "You'll see," he said. "But you have to take that first step." Her fingers grazed the door handle. She looked back once more, toward the fading light and the empty saloon room that had been both prison and refuge. Then she let go, turning fully toward him. "Lead the way," she whispered. He nodded, tilting his hat against the last rays of sun. "Easy now. One step at a time." Outside, the wind stirred the dust along the street, lifting stray bits of hay and carrying the scent of cattle and open prairie. The shadows of the town stretched long, but for the first time, she felt the possibility of distance between herself and the mockery that had haunted her. "Do you often help people?" she asked, trying to fill the silence between them. "Not always," he replied, voice quiet, calm. "But some people deserve a chance." She kept pace with him down the worn street, feeling the tension in her shoulders slowly ease. I don't know if I deserve that." "You deserve it more than you think," he said. "And you'll find out soon enough." The sky deepened into twilight, the orange fading to violet, and the first stars began to prick the horizon. She felt small beneath them, but no longer entirely alone. "You will show me?" she asked, voice soft. "I will," he said simply. "But only if you walk with me." Her boots stirred the dust on the road. She nodded, a fragile determination lifting her gaze. "Then I'll walk." He offered a faint smile, the kind that carried patience and quiet understanding. "Good. Step by step. That's all we need." And as the last light dipped behind the horizon, she took her first slow, trembling steps into a life that might finally offer safety and perhaps hope. The ranch lay on the edge of the prairie, the horizon tinged with the last orange glow of sunset. Crickets chirped softly, and the wind stirred the dry grass. She hesitated at the wooden gate, boots scuffing the dusty path. "It's just ahead," he said, voice steady. "You'll be all right." She swallowed and nodded, gripping the shawl tighter. "It smells different. Calmer, maybe." "Horses, hay, a little smoke from supper," he said. "That's about it." She followed, eyes scanning the long fence and the low barn. "You live out here alone?" "Not entirely," he answered. "A few hands help with chores. Nothing fancy, but honest work." The gate creaked as he pushed it open. A dog barked softly and trotted toward her, tail wagging cautiously. She froze. "Easy now," he said, lifting a hand. "She won't bite." The dog sniffed her boots, then nudged her fingers with a cold nose. She laughed quietly, almost forgetting the tension in her shoulders. "Hello, girl," she murmured. "Name's Daisy," he said. "She likes company, as long as you're calm." The horses in their stalls shifted, hooves clattering against wooden floors. She reached out to stroke a bay mare's nose. "They're huge," she said, voice soft. "They're gentle if you respect them," he replied. "Same with people." She glanced at him, unsure if the words were meant for her. "People aren't always gentle." "No," he admitted, eyes scanning the prairie. "But they can be. Some of them." He led her past the barn, where a few ranch hands glanced up briefly, then returned to mending fences. One waved, a small, kind gesture. "Evening," a young man called. "Evening," she murmured, voice tight. The attention felt strange, uncomfortable but not cruel. The work began almost immediately. She carried a heavy bucket of water to the horses, arms shaking. "Careful," he said, stepping closer. "Don't rush." Her fingers slipped, and the bucket tilted. Water sloshed onto the floor. "I'm sorry," she whispered, cheeks red. He steadied her hand. "It's all right. You'll get it." Her eyes met his. There was no scorn, no impatience. Only calm. Her chest tightened, a fragile hope stirring. "You'll learn," he said. "Everything takes time." The sun sank below the horizon, and lanterns flickered to life along the barn and corral. Shadows stretched long, and the smell of hay and smoke deepened. She moved among the animals, learning their rhythms. "Feed the maras first," he instructed. "Then the calves. Don't forget the water buckets after." She nodded, repeating each task quietly. The hands moved efficiently, occasionally offering a brief word of encouragement. "Steady now," one said. "Good, keep going." Her muscles ached, but each movement built a small rhythm. Her hands, once clumsy and uncertain, grew steadier. She began to feel useful. "You're doing fine," he said, voice low, standing near the lantern. "No need to hurry." She glanced up. "It's not like the town," she said, almost to herself. "No," he agreed. "It isn't. That's the point." Later, she carried hay to the stalls. A barn cat slinked past, eyes bright in the lantern light. She crouched, offering a hand. The cat nudged her fingers and purred. She laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard herself make in a long time. "You hear that?" he asked, voice quiet. "Purr," she said, smiling faintly. "Life," he said simply. "Even out here, it's alive." She felt a small warmth in her chest, a fragile flicker of safety. The town's cruelty seemed far away, replaced by the rhythm of work, the presence of animals, and his calm, steady guidance. "You make it sound easy," she said, carrying water to the calves. "It never is," he replied. "But it's worth it. You'll see." She stopped for a moment, leaning on the bucket, watching him move among the animals. His hands were steady, sure, and his eyes never judged. She felt a strange trust forming, a quiet reliance on his presence. "Do you always help people?" she asked, voice hesitant. "Not always," he said, turning to her. "Only when I can. Some folks need a hand more than they know." She set the bucket down and wiped sweat from her brow. I didn't think anyone would care." "I do," he said simply. "Even if it's just a little. That's enough to start." Night settled fully over the prairie. The stars appeared faintly above, and the soft chirping of crickets filled the silence between words. She sat on the edge of the corral, hands in her lap, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over her. "Rest a moment," he suggested, standing near her. "You've done more than enough for today." "I feel safe," she admitted quietly, almost in disbelief. "Not like the town." "That's the plan," he said, offering a small nod. "Safe for now. Step by step." She glanced at the lanterns flickering along the barn, at the dog curled nearby, and the horses settling in their stalls. The wind rustled the hay, carrying the scent of warmth and work. "It feels possible," she whispered. "It does," he agreed. "And it's yours to keep if you want it." She exhaled, a long, shaky breath. The weight of the day, the town, and her own fear began to lift slightly. I want to try." "That's all anyone can ask," he said. "Step by step, we'll get there." And as the night settled fully across the prairie, she felt a fragile thread of hope stitch itself into her chest, a quiet promise of safety she hadn't believed she would ever feel again. The sun climbed slowly over the prairie, casting golden light across the ranch. She carried water to the horses, arms tight from the weight, feeling the rhythm of the work settle into her muscles. "You've got a steady hand now," the cowboy said from behind, voice calm. "Not too fast, not too slow." She glanced over her shoulder, cheeks flushed. "I'm trying. I don't want to make mistakes." "Mistakes happen," he said. "Even the best learn from them." She nodded, setting the bucket down carefully. "I didn't expect anyone to care if I fell." "I do," he replied, "even if you don't believe it yet." She watched him move among the animals, hands gentle, eyes attentive. He never raised his voice, never scolded. Each small act, the way he replaced a loose bucket or nudged a horse back into place, spoke of care she hadn't known. "You leave extra water for me?" she asked one morning, noticing a second bucket already filled near the trough. He tilted his hat, shrugging. "I figured you might be tired. No harm in helping a hand." Her lips curved into a tentative smile. "That means a lot. Thank you." "Don't mention it," he said. "It's what people do when they can." A few days later, while she spread hay in the stalls, a small voice called from the gate. "Hello." She froze, heart thudding. A little boy, dirt-smudged and shy, stood with wide eyes. "Who's that?" "That's Tommy," the cowboy said gently. He lives nearby. Came to see the horses. The boy took a hesitant step forward. May I watch? She nodded, offering a small smile. Of course. They're gentle. Tommy's eyes lit up. Really? Gentle? They are, she said. See this one? She likes carrots. She held out a piece, and the mare nuzzled the boy's hand. His laughter rang clear, small but bright, and it filled the barn with warmth she hadn't felt in years. You've got away with them, the cowboy said quietly. They respond to kindness. She looked at him, surprise in her eyes. You think I'm kind? I see it, he said simply. Even when you doubt yourself. For the next hour, she showed Tommy the horses and helped him pet the barn cats. The boy's laughter echoed against the wooden walls, soft and healing. She felt her chest loosen, her shoulders drop. A fragile hope took root. Later, she carried a bucket to the water trough, muscles sore but steady. Do you often let people help like this? She asked, voice quiet. Not always, he replied, eyes on the horizon. Some things are too delicate, but sometimes it's worth it. She nodded, feeling a thread of trust growing. The world of kindness he offered was steady, calm, and real. That evening, a letter arrived, delivered by a slow rider. She hesitated before opening it, knowing the town's voice often carried only judgment. You don't have to read it, the cowboy said softly, noticing her pause. I need to know, she said, fingers trembling as she unfolded the paper. The words inside were sharp, whispers of gossip questioning her presence on the ranch. She read them aloud quietly. No one should let her stay. She doesn't belong. What's he thinking? He nodded, listening without interrupting. They don't understand, he said after a pause. And that's all right. You're not here for them. She folded the letter, heart tightening. It still stings, even from far away. Of course it does, he admitted. But you have to decide who shapes your days. Them or you. She looked at him, the flickering lantern casting shadows across his face. I want to choose me, she whispered. He gave a faint smile. Then you already have. The days blurred into routine, work punctuated by quiet moments of trust. He left her small notes sometimes, reminders of tasks, encouragements scribbled simply. Good work today, or steady your learning. Each word grounded her, slowly replacing the echoes of mockery that had haunted her for years. One evening, she sat near the stable, brushing a mare's coat. I never thought someone would notice small things like that, she said, voice low. That's what matters, he said. Not the big, flashy things. Just the steady care. That's real. Her hands worked methodically, rubbing the horse's back. It feels different. Safe. Safe is earned, he said. Not given. You're earning it every day. A soft whinny came from the stall. She looked up to see Tommy peeking through the gate, holding a scrap of rope. Can I help feed them tomorrow? You may, she said, smiling. The boy's joy was infectious, filling the ranch with small bursts of laughter. She realized how much she had missed warmth, connection, and simple trust. Later, while he tended the fences, she watched him pause, gazing at the horizon. Do you ever worry about the town? She asked, voice quiet. Sometimes, he admitted. But out here, we make our own measure. That's the world that counts. She nodded, understanding in a way that was slow but sure. Her muscles ached, her hands bore blisters, yet her heart felt steadier than it had in years. She was learning patience, trust, and the fragile art of hope. As night fell, lanterns casting a soft glow, she and Tommy lay a blanket for the horses, sharing quiet conversation. I like this place, the boy said, eyes bright. It feels happy. She smiled faintly, brushing his hair from his face. It can be, she said, if you let it. The cowboy stood nearby, hands resting lightly on the fence, watching without interference. His presence was calm, solid, a quiet promise of protection and steadiness. I think I can stay, she whispered to him, voice trembling but certain. You can, he said softly. and I'll be here while you learn it. The wind carried the scent of hay and the open prairie, mingling with the soft chorus of crickets. Shadows stretched across the ranch, but inside, a fragile warmth pulsed. She felt the first real stirrings of hope, trust, and something like belonging. And as the night deepened over the prairie, she allowed herself a quiet thought. Maybe, just maybe, the world could be gentler than she had ever dared to believe. She walked along the fence line, hands brushing the dry wood, eyes on the horizon. Dust swirled around her boots, lifted by a soft afternoon wind. "They're talking about you again," the cowboy said quietly, joining her with a water bucket in hand. She didn't look at him. "I know," she muttered. "I can hear them in the wind." "They won't stop," he said gently. "But neither will you." She shook her head. "It feels like it will never end." "Then let's make it matter less," he replied. "One day at a time." The next morning, a letter appeared in the mailbox by the gate. She opened it with trembling fingers. The words inside were sharp, whispers of suspicion and gossip. She shouldn't be here. The cowboy's foolish. Who does she think she is? "They still write," she said, voice low, folding the letter carefully. "Even from afar, they want me gone." "Let them talk," he said. "You have more control over your life than they do." She clutched the paper, chest tight. "Control feels fragile." "It is," he admitted. "But you're stronger than you think." Later, she entered the general store, lantern light casting shadows on the rough wood floor. The shopkeeper glanced at her and quickly looked away. "Look who's wandering into town now," a woman hissed from behind the counter. "Still pretending she belongs here?" She stiffened, hands gripping her bag of supplies. I just came for bread," she said quietly. "You? Bread?" the woman spat. "You don't deserve it. You never have." Her heart thudded, but she forced herself to remain upright. "I'll pay," she whispered, reaching for her coins. "You pay with nothing but pride," the woman said. "Don't think anyone forgot what you are." She froze, cheeks burning. Her eyes flicked to the cowboy standing in the doorway, calm as ever. "Leave her be," he said, voice low but firm. "She's doing no harm." The woman's eyes narrowed. "And who are you to tell me that?" "I'm someone who knows the truth," he replied evenly. "And I won't watch you hurt her for no reason." She felt a flicker of warmth in her chest, a strange reassurance. She nodded slightly, clutching her bread. The woman sneered, but said nothing further. The shopkeeper's eyes met hers briefly, offering a quiet, sympathetic glance. Outside, the wind carried dust along the street. She adjusted her shawl, holding it closer. Why don't they stop?" she asked softly. "They can't," he said. "But their words only matter if you let them." She lowered her eyes, thinking of the past weeks. Each insult, each letter, each glance of disdain had weighed heavily. But here, now, with him near, she felt a fragile steadiness. "Even when it hurts?" she asked. "Especially then," he said. "That's when strength counts." That evening, she carried water to the horses. Her muscles ached, and sweat dampened her brow. "You've got steady hands today," he observed, standing near the barn, lantern light catching the lines of his face. She managed a faint smile. "I'm learning." Slowly. "That's enough," he said. Slow and steady beats rushing every time. A young ranch hand passed, offering a quiet nod. "You're doing fine," he said. The simplicity of the words warmed her more than any praise she had received in years. She met his eyes. "It feels good to be noticed for doing right." "Noticing is the start," he replied. "Respect comes later." The night settled, crickets chirping softly as shadows stretched across the corral. She leaned on the fence, looking at the stars. "They're still whispering," she said, voice barely audible. "Even from the town." He stood beside her, silent for a moment, then said, "They don't define you. You do. Remember that." Her fingers twined in the shawl, tracing the frayed edges. "It's hard to believe that sometimes." "It is," he said. "But it's true. Step by step, you'll see it." The next morning, another letter arrived, this one heavier, edged with suspicion. Why is he helping her? She's unworthy. The town will not allow this. She read it quietly, then let it fall to the ground. They don't know me, she whispered. They never did, he said. And they won't. But that doesn't matter anymore. A soft breeze moved through the ranch, carrying the scent of hay and horses. She closed her eyes, letting the familiar smells settle over her, a contrast to the bitterness of the letters. They won't understand ever, she said finally. No, he admitted. But you can understand yourself. And that counts for more than their gossip. She opened her eyes, looking at him, trying to absorb the quiet strength he offered. I think I'm beginning to. That's the first step, he said. Everything else comes after. Later, she walked along the fence, adjusting the buckets. The cowboy followed at a measured pace, watching without interference. Do you always face things like this? She asked softly. Cruelty, that is? Sometimes, he replied. But it doesn't define the work we do, or the people we protect. She nodded, absorbing the rhythm of his words and the movement of the ranch. Even the dust, the lanterns, and the shifting shadows seemed less oppressive here, anchored by his quiet presence. She paused, hands on the fence, looking at the horizon. I still fear them. The town. Their voices. And you will, he said calmly. But fear doesn't have to control you. You can walk despite it. She swallowed hard, feeling a flicker of confidence. Walking step by step, she murmured. That's all it takes, he said. You've done more than you know. She glanced at him, heart still tight but steady. I think I can face them. One day at a time. You can, he said. And I'll be here while you do. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the ranch. Dust stirred around her boots as she adjusted her shawl, feeling the first true spark of self-respect in years. The town's whispers remained, but they no longer threatened to break her entirely. And as she leaned against the fence, eyes on the horizon, she realized that the cruelty had shifted, but so had she. For the first time, she felt the fragile power of choice, the quiet courage to stand, and the hope that the world could be kinder than she had feared. The town square bustled with activity, lanterns swaying in the late afternoon breeze. Stalls lined the wooden sidewalks, selling everything from dried meats to handmade trinkets. Children ran between the tables, laughter ringing out, while townsfolk bartered loudly, voices echoing across the dusty street. She clutched the shawl tighter around her shoulders, nerves twisting like cold wire in her stomach. Are you ready for this? The cowboy asked, his voice calm at her side. I don't know, she admitted, fingers twisting in the fabric. They'll remember. They might, he said softly, but that won't change who you are. She swallowed, nodding, and followed him along the rough boards toward the central gathering. The smell of dust, smoke from the grill, and hay from the nearby corral mingled in the air. A man stepped forward from the crowd, smirking. Well, look who's come out of hiding, he jeered. Thought you'd stay at that ragged ranch, didn't you? Her chest tightened, old shame clawing upward. The laughter that followed reminded her of the town square months ago, when every eye had been ablaze. She dropped her gaze, hands trembling slightly. Isn't she the one who, the man continued, voice sneering, fell flat at the festival last year? Pathetic, if you ask me. Her fingers clenched the shawl, nails digging into the frayed edges. A wave of fear and humiliation surged through her, a bitter reminder of every cruel word she had endured. The cowboy stepped forward. His boots stirred dust lightly, his posture straight but unassuming. Enough, he said quietly, yet every word carried weight. That's enough. The man turned, eyebrows raised. And who are you two? I am someone who knows the truth, the cowboy interrupted, voice steady, eyes meeting the sneer without wavering. She has more courage and decency than anyone here. A hush rippled through the crowd. Even the children paused, sensing the quiet authority in his tone. She has endured ridicule, scorn, and every insult this town could muster, he continued. And still, she stands. Still, she works with honesty and patience. That is more than most of you can claim. Her heartbeat thudded so loudly she feared it would betray her. She raised her eyes, meeting his gaze.
Calm. Solid.
Protective. She felt a warmth bloom in her chest, a quiet vindication that she had not dared to imagine. You dare speak for her? The man demanded, voice shaking slightly under the weight of attention. I do, the cowboy said simply. And I will. She took a breath, letting the tension in her shoulders loosen just a fraction. The crowd's sneers faltered, replaced by murmurs of surprise and disbelief. She straightened her back, standing taller than she had in months. Her hands rested lightly at her sides, fingers brushing the shawl, steady. The man began again, faltering under the calm authority of the cowboy. You have nothing to add, the cowboy said, his eyes steady on the crowd now. The only judgment that matters is one of honesty and integrity. And by that measure, she has already proven herself. Whispers ran through the townsfolk. Faces turned, some with skepticism, others with the faintest hint of admiration. Children peeked from behind their parents, eyes wide at the courage in her stance. She felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. The fear, though not gone, was tempered by a newfound strength. Every insult, every cruel glance from the past, felt smaller beneath the weight of the cowboy's words. She allowed herself to inhale deeply, the dusty air of the square filling her lungs. A shopkeeper cleared his throat, leaning slightly from behind a stall. Perhaps he's right, he muttered. She does carry herself differently than before. The sneering man muttered something under his breath, but said no more. He stepped back, absorbed by the murmur of the crowd and the realization that the town's usual cruelty held less power here. The cowboy remained at her side, quiet but vigilant. Hold your ground, he whispered softly. You've earned it. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I can, she said, voice firmer than she expected. I will. The children nearby shuffled closer, curious and unafraid now. One small boy tugged gently at her skirt. Are you really okay? He asked. She smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I am, she said, because I've learned to stand for myself. The cowboy nodded, eyes still on the crowd. Step by step, he said quietly. That's all it takes. A few women in the back murmured among themselves, whispers edged with shame for the harshness they had previously displayed. She's more than we thought, one said softly. She felt the first real sense of vindication in years. The town's whispers, once sharp and constant, had faltered. The weight of their judgment, though not entirely gone, seemed diminished. Do you see? The cowboy asked quietly, voice low enough only for her to hear. This is your moment, not theirs. Her chest swelled with a fragile pride. I do, she whispered. Her fingers brushed the shawl, a symbol of her past struggles, now held with newfound steadiness. The sun dipped lower, lanterns flickering as dusk approached. Shadows stretched across the wooden boards of the square, but she stood firmly, eyes unwavering, hands steady. The cowboy's presence beside her was a quiet anchor, a reassurance that she no longer faced the world alone. They'll talk, she said softly. They will, he admitted. But that talk no longer shapes you. You do. She nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate. Every insult, every cruel glance, every whispered rumor had brought her here. And now, standing beside him, she felt a clear shift. The town's cruelty could no longer define her. Step by step, she murmured, echoing his earlier words. I'll keep standing. And I'll be here, he said, voice calm, steady, unwavering. Always. The square grew quieter, the lanterns glowing softly against the deepening twilight. The horses in the nearby corral nicked and shuffled, the wind rustling the dust. She felt the first complete sense of moral justice, not in wealth, not in revenge, but in dignity reclaimed. The crowd's whispers faded into muted murmurs of recognition. She met the cowboy's gaze, steady and approving, and allowed herself a small, fragile smile. For the first time in years, she felt the certainty of her own worth. And as the last light of day fell over the town square, she knew that this moment, the simple act of standing beside him, hands steady, eyes unwavering, marked the true turning point of her life. The whispers of the town could no longer shake her. The dignity she had reclaimed was hers alone. The sun dipped low over the prairie, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. She carried a bucket of water to the horses, the cool touch of metal grounding her in the present. The dust clung to her boots, the wind tousled her hair, but for the first time, she felt the rhythm of belonging. "You're steady with that," the cowboy said, standing nearby, lantern light reflecting softly on his face. I think I'm getting the hang of it," she replied, muscles sore but hands sure. "It doesn't feel so heavy anymore." He nodded, passing her the reins of a bay mare. "Try her next." She responds well to calm hands. She held the reins carefully, feeling the mare shift under her touch. She listens," she said, a small laugh escaping. "Unlike some people. Some people aren't worth listening to," he said quietly, voice low, almost private. "But animals, they pay attention to honesty." She smiled faintly, adjusting the reins. I like that. Clear rules, simple ways." Later, in the kitchen, he handed her a steaming cup of tea. "Thought you might need a break," he said, eyes soft but steady. "Thank you," she said, taking it gratefully. The warmth seeped into her fingers and then into her chest, as if the cup held more than liquid, comfort and calm she hadn't known she could feel. "You're welcome," he said, glancing toward the window where the last streaks of daylight faded. Even when the world outside is harsh, small kindness matters. I'm beginning to see that," she admitted, sipping carefully. "It's consistent, not fleeting." He nodded, smiling faintly. "Consistency is rare, but it builds trust, step by step." A small voice interrupted, timid but eager. "Miss, may I help feed the calves today?" She looked up to see Tommy, the child from the neighboring farm, holding a small pail. "Of course," she said, smiling gently. "Careful now, they can be quick." Tommy nodded, eyes bright. "I'll be careful." They worked side by side, the quiet clatter of buckets and soft nickers of calves filling the barn. She guided his hands when necessary, offering patience rather than correction. Every small smile from him mirrored the respect she had begun to feel for herself. "See," she said softly, "patience goes a long way." "I think I'm learning," he said, laughing as a calf nudged his shoulder. "Good," she said, feeling warmth in her chest. "That's the idea." Evening came, and lanterns were lit around the corral and house. She settled on the porch steps, watching the horses shift in their stalls. The cowboy joined her, a soft sigh escaping his lips. "The stars are coming out," he said quietly. "Want me to tell you their stories?" "I'd like that," she replied, brushing her hair back. Her hands rested loosely in her lap, tension eased by the calm evening. "They say that each star holds a story of someone brave, someone who endured," he said. "Even when the night seems endless, there's light above." She looked up, eyes tracing the first faint points of light in the deepening sky. "It feels hopeful," she whispered.
"It is," he said.
"Small lights, but steady. Just like you." A gentle breeze stirred, rustling the shawl around her shoulders. She smiled, the weight of past humiliations lightened by the quiet constancy of the ranch. The house, once empty and cold, now hummed with warmth and safety. "Do you ever feel like this place cares for you?" she asked softly. He tilted his hat, eyes thoughtful. "It doesn't care by itself. People give it life. And you've earned your place here. That counts more than you realize." Her lips curved into a genuine smile. I do feel it. Finally. "That's the gift," he said. "Belonging isn't given. It's built, one act, one day, one steady hand at a time." A laugh rose from inside the house, and she glanced in to see one of the ranch hands spilling flour in his attempt to bake bread. She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Not everything goes smoothly," the cowboy said, voice low. "Even here, mistakes happen." "I know," she said, warmth in her chest. But it's all right. I can laugh now, even at the small chaos. Good, he said. Laughter is part of belonging, too. The next morning, she carried feed to the stalls. The town's gossip still reached her in small fragments, letters, whispers, but they no longer cut as deeply. She handed a bucket to Tommy, guiding him patiently. You're patient, he said. I like that. I learned it from observing, she replied, smiling gently. Sometimes watching is better than rushing. The cowboy passed by, nodding in approval. And sometimes small gestures build the greatest trust, he said quietly. Her fingers brushed the shawl at her shoulders, a symbol of the journey she had endured. Once it had been a shield against ridicule and fear. Now it felt like a banner of progress, a token of steady courage and small victories. You've changed, he said later, as they leaned against the fence, watching the horses graze. Not because of the town, not because of others, because of what you chose each day. She looked up at him, eyes steady. I think I understand that now. Belonging isn't something handed to me. I had to take it, slowly, one step at a time. Exactly, he said. And you did. That's why it feels real. The lanterns flickered in the fading light, shadows dancing across the porch and corral. She leaned back, feeling the steady rhythm of the ranch seep into her bones. Work, laughter, quiet evenings, and small acts of kindness had stitched a fragile warmth into her heart. A breeze rustled the hay, and the dog curled near her feet, tail wagging gently. Even small creatures feel the rhythm here, she said softly. They do, he said. And you notice it because you belong. That's the gift. Her gaze moved to Tommy, busy in the corral, learning the same lessons of care and patience. A quiet pride swelled within her. She had become someone worthy of trust, of respect, of small, steady joy. The town there whispers, she began, voice quiet. They're faint now, he said. And that's as much as you need to notice. The rest, it's your choice. She nodded, feeling the weight of years of shame lift slightly. She inhaled deeply, dust and hay and prairie air filling her lungs, and let herself smile fully for the first time in years. Yes, she whispered. I choose this. Step by step. One day at a time. And I'll be here, he said softly. Watching, steady, always. The night settled over the ranch, stars blazing in the dark sky above. Lanterns glowed gently, casting long shadows across the wooden boards. She sat quietly on the porch steps, shawl around her shoulders, watching the gentle movement of the animals and the soft flicker of light. The lingering shadow of town gossip remained faintly, a reminder of what she had endured, but it no longer held power. She had earned her place, built trust, and reclaimed a sense of dignity and safety. And as the wind stirred the prairie grass and the horses shifted in their stalls, she felt the first deep certainty that she belonged, not only on the ranch, but in the world she had slowly, steadily carved for herself. The morning sun spilled gold across the dusty road, catching the edges of the letter she had received. Its official seal pressed into her palm felt strangely heavy, yet not with fear. She turned it over, reading the words that made her breath catch. The mansion she had been dragged from months ago now legally belonged to her. Is it really true? She whispered, voice trembling but calm. It is, the cowboy replied softly, standing just behind her. His eyes were steady, unwavering. You've earned this. All that's left is for them to see it. She folded the letter carefully, letting the edges brush against her fingers. I don't feel angry, she said. Not really. Just ready. Good, he said quietly. Then we go together.
The town felt different that day.
Dust rose in lazy swirls as they walked through streets that had once mocked her. Faces turned at the sight of her, eyes widening with disbelief and a flicker of shame. Mothers tugged their children back, whispers curling through the air. She owns it now, the one we laughed at. A familiar voice called out, sharp and incredulous. You can't just... She stopped in the center of the square, glancing at the man who had jeered at her months ago. Her chest rose slowly with each measured breath. I can, she said softly, voice calm but resolute. It's mine, legally, rightfully, and it always should have been. The man faltered, his words caught in his throat. Murmurs spread among the gathered townsfolk, faces flushing with embarrassment. The laughter that had once carved hollows in her chest was gone, replaced by stunned silence. Seems the law agrees with her, someone muttered from the back, unable to mask surprise. She let her eyes wander over the crowd, noting the shifting expressions, the softened stares, the averted glances, the unmistakable realization that cruelty could no longer define her. The cowboy stepped closer. "Shall we?" he asked quietly, offering a hand. She hesitated, then nodded, placing hers in his. The warmth of his grip steadied her, a gentle reminder that she was no longer alone. Together, they walked along the familiar path toward the mansion, the dust settling in lazy golden waves around their boots. The front doors loomed before her, wooden panels gleaming faintly in the morning light. She remembered the humiliation of being dragged from them, of the harsh laughter and pointed fingers. But now, she approached with steady steps, head held high. "Here we are," the cowboy said quietly, standing slightly behind her. She pressed her hand to the door, feeling the cool wood beneath her palm. "It feels different," she whispered. "It should," he said, "because this time it's yours. And no one can take that away." Inside, the room seemed familiar, yet transformed. Sunlight spilled across the polished floorboards, casting gentle shadows along the walls. She walked slowly, taking in the quiet dignity of the space she had reclaimed, not with anger, but with calm assurance. Her family was waiting, their expressions frozen between surprise and disbelief. Her siblings' mouths opened, closed, then opened again, as if searching for words that could undo the law. She looked at them evenly. "I have returned," she said softly. "Not in anger, not for revenge, but to reclaim what is mine, and to remind everyone that cruelty does not last." Her father's face, lined with years and regret, turned pale. You own this?" he asked. "Yes," she said simply. "All of it. And that truth cannot be changed." The cowboy remained at her side, silent support. His presence was steady, a shield that allowed her to stand fully in her dignity, without faltering. A sister stepped forward, voice quivering. "But how?" "After everything." She shook her head slowly. "After everything, kindness and truth endure. They endure longer than lies, cruelty, or scorn. That is why I stand here now." A silence filled the room, heavy yet quiet, the weight of moral reckoning pressing softly upon them. The townsfolk, drawn by the commotion, peered through the windows, whispers of astonishment rippling among them. She's actually calm," someone muttered, astonished. "She's unshakable," another voice added, barely audible. Her father swallowed, eyes fixed on her steady gaze. We never expected." "You never believed," she said, voice soft but firm. "But belief is not required to make truth real. Actions, integrity, and perseverance made this possible. Not anger, not hatred, just quiet endurance." She moved through the familiar rooms, fingers brushing the polished surfaces, letting each touch reclaim more than wood and stone. She reclaimed the space she had once feared, and with it, a measure of self-respect and calm that had been denied to her for too long. I never thought I'd see you stand like this," her sister said finally, voice trembling. "Stand," she said, a small, measured smile on her lips. "It is the first right step in many. You can watch, but you cannot undo it." The sunlight shifted through the windows, casting a warm glow across the floorboards and illuminating the quiet pride in her stance. She looked at the cowboy, eyes meeting his briefly, gratitude reflected in the soft curve of her lips. "You kept your word," she whispered, a gentle note of recognition. "I did," he said quietly, "because someone worth respecting deserves quiet, steadfast support." The family turned away, some muttering under their breath, others silent in shame. Outside, the townsfolk lingered, whispers now tinged with hesitation and respect. She felt their gaze, no longer cutting, but curious, acknowledging the dignity she had earned. Stepping onto the porch, she breathed deeply. The breeze carried dust and the faint scent of flowers from the garden she had once tended. Lanterns swung gently in the wind, and the sunlight painted soft lines across the boards. I can stay here, she whispered, voice light, unburdened, and I can finally feel that it is mine, that I am mine. The cowboy joined her, leaning lightly against the railing. Yes, he said, and now you know that justice, though slow, can arrive. And that kindness, quiet, steady, unwavering, heals deeper than cruelty ever could. She let the warmth of his words sink in, a quiet acknowledgement of all she had endured and all she had gained. She adjusted the shawl around her shoulders, a symbol no longer of protection against ridicule, but of resilience and reclaimed dignity. Step by step, she murmured, eyes on the horizon. One step at a time. And always with the right company, he added softly. She glanced at him, the faintest smile touching her lips. Yes, she said, and with quiet support, even in the hardest moments. The sun fell lower, shadows stretching across the porch. Dust swirled lazily around their boots, the wind carrying a soft hush of the prairie. She took a deep breath, letting the air fill her chest, and felt a calm settle into her bones. The mansion was hers, yes, but more than that, she had reclaimed herself. Every whisper of shame, every past humiliation, every cruel glance had led her here, to a place of quiet power and dignity. And as the lanterns flickered gently and the breeze whispered through the open windows, she understood that this moment, sunlight, stillness, and steady companionship, was a true promise of hope. Justice had arrived, not in anger, but in quiet persistence. And she, finally, could breathe freely.